Hey, what's up guys? It's Mr. McCabe here. I just wanted to take you through how the slab roller works so we know all the ins and outs and we don't get hung up on anything. So a slab roller is a big industrial rolling pin. So it works basically the same way as this, but we can do bigger amounts of clay with greater ease. So this is the rolling pin right here. It's mounted to the tabletop and it rolls on the tracks or the edges right here. These are the rails that it rolls on. So this thing, because this thing is mounted, we can take out these boards on the tabletop, and when we take out a board, it increases the distance between the rolling pin and that surface. So if we need to change the thickness of what we're doing, we add more boards in or take them out. So down here on the end, I have, there's a little hole so you can grab it and we can kind of get under here. So these are the boards, what they look like. The one with the canvas always goes in first, the rest of them are just masonite boards. But you can pull these out or add in others if you want to change the thickness here. In this studio, in this class, we don't really do that. So it's set to 3/4 of an inch, and that's the standard that we work with. So you shouldn't have to do this at all. So the top board has canvas on it, and also you can see there's a canvas top here as well that's back over the rolling pin and hanging off the edge. And that's how we want that to be when we start to flatten our clay. So when we're ready to flatten our clay, we put the clay down here, and then we start to crank the handle, and it pulls the rolling pin along the rails, and it also pulls the canvas along with it, and the clay starts to push out and flatten as we're rolling. The purpose of the canvas is so the clay doesn't stick to, it would just stick to the wheel head if the canvas wasn't there, or the rolling pin. So that it sucks out the moisture and causes it not to stick. The reason a slab roller is so nice is because it makes the process of rolling out slabs a lot easier, and you can get it done a lot faster. And the way that works is, for one, the rolling pin is mounted to a tabletop. But really, it's because underneath there's a smaller pipe and there's cables that pull from one end of the table to the other. And that's really important to make this easy to roll. Okay, so I'm starting to roll this. So I'm slowly rolling the handle. There's no clay under it at the moment, so it's going really easy. But how it works is, if I look underneath here, you can see this pipe right here that has the cables wrapped around it. So one of the cables comes under here and is bolted to this side. The other cable goes way down and across and is bolted to the other side. And there's one on each side. So there's two cables under this that wrap around the pipe. And that's what makes this go so easy. So you can see those cables are rolled really tightly right under here. So one of the things to know is that if you go really fast on this thing, if I crank it super fast, especially when you're rolling it backwards, when you're done flattening the clay, if you roll too fast, those cables that are wound really nice and neat along this pipe, they can loosen and jump track and roll over each other for a split second and then crank down on each other, and it actually causes a flat spot or a weak spot in the cable, and then they can start to fray and come undone. So when we're rolling this, we want to go nice and easy, so not super fast, but just a nice slow pace. So another way that this can possibly break, less likely, but it's a possibility, so just to be aware of it, is if you're rolling a big chunk of clay like this, and this isn't even that big, is to beat it down. If you just have a huge chunk in the way of the rolling pin, it can cause a lot of pressure on the cables underneath. So it's a good idea to kind of beat down the clay so it's not such a big mound, but to bring it down a little smaller, and that will help it as it rolls forward. So it's important to know what you're making, because as I beat this down and as I put this clay under the rolling pin, you're going to get two different effects. So if I'm making something like a long, thin vase out of slabs, I might want to smash this down in a longer way. So as the rolling pin rolls over this, it will expand out a little bit, but it will stretch much longer. If I want to do something like a plate, so I want something circular, I might want this to be a little wider so it stretches out wide and doesn't go out as long. So the placement of the clay under here is pretty important. So now, as I roll this, I'm going slow. I've got it beaten down a little bit. And you can see it starts to stretch out. So I do have to use a little bit of muscle, but it's way easier and way faster than using a rolling pin. So I'm going to stop there. An really important thing, and the most common way slab rollers break in a community classroom like this is when you're back rolling. So as I flatten my clay now and I need to roll it back, it's really important that you either throw the canvas over the top all the way and then roll this back. Probably the easiest thing to do. The other thing is you can hold it up as you roll it back. So I just flattened this clay here, and so there's clay underneath here. I've had 2 slab rollers break because of this exactly. So if you don't get the canvas out of the way, what can happen as you're back rolling is it can crease underneath. It will eventually, if you don't get it out of the way, it can crease under, and then as you're pulling on it, you don't realize that, and you can actually rip the cables out. And I've had that happen twice. And then we have to get a repair guy in here, because I'm not doing that. And it's a big job to rewire this machine, retable it. So we don't want to let that happen. Once you flatten the clay, if there's other people waiting behind you, you probably want to take this back to your desk. So I'd probably lay it on a board and then bring it back to your table so it doesn't stick to the tabletop. So be careful not to mar up with your fingers. It's really soft, so I can, if I'm just lightly touching it, press on it. So I grab it from the ends, which you usually cut away, and then you can bring that away to your tabletop. And if you look here, just with rolling that out, the canvas has absorbed a lot of water, and that usually dries pretty quick unless it's getting a lot of use, and then it'll take a few minutes for this to dry out. So if you're using it after somebody else, you probably don't want to put your clay in the same wet spot. So you might put your clay over to the side in one of the drier spots, or just wait a minute until this dries out. Otherwise, if it gets really saturated with water, it can start to stick. But once you bring it back to your table, the first thing you want to do before you really start shaping it is you can use this metal rib here, or sometimes these scraper blades that we use to clean the tables off. These are good to smooth also. You really want to smooth out the surface of the slab. So you can see we're using canvas, so you want to wipe that canvas texture away. And I usually say when that canvas texture is away, that's good. And it's not so much because of the texture. It isn't at all because of the texture that we want to smooth this. We want to smooth this because we want to compress the surface of this clay slab. If I don't do anything to this, it's really prone to cracking. So you want to do a really good job smoothing out. I just say, for good measure, do both sides. So before you really do anything else, you just want to smooth the heck out of this sucker. So again, you can use this little guy, you can use the rubber ribs, or you can just go right to this big scraper blade and just smooth this out. But now we're ready to rock. Now we got this thing smoothed on both sides, and now we're ready to start doing whatever.